as you know, Mike Pillow, or MyPillow CEO Mike Lindell, has been railing against alleged election fraud since Donald Trump lost to President Joe Biden. And of course, Donald Trump had been talking about the possibility of mass voter fraud, only of course if he lost. If he had won, we wouldn't be talking about voter fraud at all, unless he would say, oh, you know, I still won bigly by even a bigger amount. I would have gotten 30 million votes instead of more. But no, he lost. And so no matter what, he was going to blame voter fraud or attack voter fraud, etc., even though it doesn't actually exist. It's not a real thing. There's no evidence. Now, Lindell and other conspiracy theorists like Sidney Powell, for example, they've been targeting voting machines owned by Dominion and the software by Smartmatic. Now, they've been using wild conspiracy theories that they were used by China to install Joe Biden. There's, of course, no evidence of that. There's no evidence of votes being flipped from Donald Trump to Joe Biden. There's no evidence of the Italians, the Iranians, and yes, even the Pomeranians. They had nothing to do with Donald Trump's loss. However, there is, while there is no evidence to prove that machines were hacked, that doesn't mean that it's out of the realm of possibility. And so I'd actually addressed this earlier in another segment, where it's like, okay, maybe we should go to hand-counted paper ballots, because that would be a good idea to make sure that everything was accountable, because there are, you know, flaws and vulnerabilities, of course, that could crop up, that could be exploited by nefarious powers, right? Again, once again, there's no evidence that this happened in the election. The 2020 election was sound, incredibly sound. And so they didn't find any evidence of that. That said, back in July, there was an analysis done by cybersecurity expert J. Alex Halderman. Now that it shows that a certain type of Dominion voting machine has a possibility of being hacked, theoretically. Again, very important words to point out, theoretically, okay? That does not mean that it was. Again, no evidence, no evidence. But what I'm saying here is anything that you plug into the internet or connect to the internet at any time has the possibility of being hacked into. It just happens. Now, of course, these voting machines are not plugged into the internet when voting is happening. And so, once again, that's very important, a very important piece of cybersecurity data. Now, that said, you had U.S. District Judge Amy Totenberg did order this report to be sealed. Now, why? Well, it was sealed out of concern that the cybersecurity analysis could be exploited in bad faith to fuel nonsense conspiracy theories, which is 100% true. Of course that would happen. Now, that said, even without the report, are there nonsense conspiracy theories? Of course. But the existence of the report, apparently Mike Pillow heard about this. Mike Pillow and the rest of the right-wing nutters that are spreading the big lie, well, they've heard about this report and they want it released. And I might actually agree with them. Now, let me lay out the case, right? So now, Mike Pillow and his attorneys recently led a motion on Saturday asking for this report. Now, of course, they want to use this report that does not allege any election fraud. It does not. There's nowhere in this report that we know of that says that there was any hacks into these machines. It just points out a possible vulnerability, which do happen in these machines and in any machine, right? Now, nonetheless, Mike Pillow wants to use this to support his case about the election fraud or his false claims. In fact, here's what they wrote. This was a court filing by Lindell attorney Kurt Hilbert, saying, quote, "The Halderman report strongly supports the conclusion that Dominion's electronic voting machines are vulnerable to intrusion, manipulation, and fraud." Now, again, just because there's a possible vulnerability, that doesn't mean it happened. It doesn't mean that this vulnerability was exploited in the election. You actually have to prove that it happened. And once again, they have proven that that is not what happened. So now Haldeman, however, had been hired as an expert on behalf of voting rights experts who had sued the state of Georgia. Why? To put pressure on Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, a Republican, in order to update the system. You keep the systems updated, you keep them upgraded, you keep them. It's basically like updating your, your antivirus suite, right, on your computer. Sort of, right? So there are firmware updates, there are software updates to make sure that any vulnerabilities that may be discovered by, for example, white hat hackers could be patched so that, you make sure, or if there's a serious design flaw in, say, the architecture of the machines, well, then you can have that fixed. And so you make sure that you patch out and have no open vulnerabilities. So that's important for cybersecurity. Look, I care about secure elections. Everybody cares about secure elections. Again, that's why I actually promote hand-counted paper ballots, and why I've always promoted hand-counted paper ballots. That said, right? Now, the reason that this report is not public is understandable, but I think misguided. Now, Totenberg had steadfastly rejected requests by voting rights groups, Homeland Security officials, as well as insane conspiracy theorists. Why? Because, once again, she's concerned, rightly so, that it would be twisted to bolster the big lie, Donald Trump's election fraud lies. So again, legit concern. Obviously, we do have a bunch of lunatics who will use this to undercut public trust in our electoral system. That's very, very dangerous for democracy. So look, right now, again, we have to have trust in our elections and our voter systems, or else our system entirely breaks down. And so, look, when people don't believe that their vote matters, they do a couple of different things. One of them, they just check out. Others, however, like we saw on January 6th, well, they become violent. We don't want any of that. We don't want any of that. So I can understand why you would want to hold back being this judge and seeing the right wing go absolutely insane over nonsense conspiracy theories, want to hold that report back. But this report shows that there are legitimate vulnerabilities. Those vulnerabilities, if they exist, need to be fixed. You just need to fix them so that somebody in the future cannot take advantage of any vulnerabilities. So now David Cross, an attorney for a voting rights activist group who argues for the release of the report, is frustrated over the conspiracy theorists and, basically frustrated that they're jumping on this report, causing the judge to want to seal this report. In fact, he said they're a big part of the reason why we've not been able to share Dr. Haldeman's report with the responsible authorities. That's very, very important, right? Responsible authorities and other members of the election security community who could help address the important concerns identified in the report. Once again, Cross had added, to be clear, the report does not identify any fraud in any election, nor was that its purpose. Its purpose was only to find possible vulnerabilities and then to alert the company and alert officials, hey, watch out for this. That's it. That's it. Now, the intention, of course, is not to create conspiracies. However, what you have in having this report, and everybody knows that this report exists, and yet sealing the report, well, you're going to end up creating more conspiracy theories, and that's exactly what happened. In fact, what you have was the Streisand report, or I'm sorry, the Streisand effect. See, Fox News had recently sought the report in January to support its own ridiculous defense in their defamation case. I think their defamation case that Smartmatic has against Fox News is very, very clear. Of course, Fox News defamed it. They used Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson's like, oh, well, I'm just asking questions, but if this turns out to be true, that Venezuela, again, this is one of the claims floated by Sidney Powell, whom Tucker Carlson reported on. Sidney Powell was claiming like this was created, that Smartmatic software was created by Venezuelans. What? by Hugo Chavez as a way to somehow steal the election for Democrats. Again, it boggles the mind. It makes no sense. It's complete and utter nonsense. Tucker Carlson airs this on a show. It's like, oh, if this happens to be true, this could be the greatest crime in America. He knows it's not true. He knows it's all complete and utter bullshit. And yet, continue to air these conspiracy theories, but with the veneer of, oh, you know, this, I'm just asking questions. I'm just asking questions. No, you know it's false. You know it's defamatory. You know you should get in trouble for it. As I said, though, unfortunately, you've got these conspiracy theories that are being helped by holding back this report. Okay? Now, Lindell's request could be aided by Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger's recent decision to reverse himself and ask for the report's public release, which, again, I don't think would be harmful as it doesn't show what they want it to show. Although the state's officials also agree that it will not prove Trump's loss was tainted. So again, Raffensperger's like, yeah, look, we verified the results in Georgia. And so, I don't know, look, just release a report and it will show you absolutely nothing to help your case because there is no case to be made. There was no election fraud. Now, Secretary of State Raffensperger had led the procurement and implementation of voting machines, according to a spokeswoman for Governor Brian Kemp, and it is his duty to ensure those machines are safe, secure, and reliable. Absolutely. And once again, I think we all care about election security. In fact, they continue by saying he should work to gather all relevant information regarding this report, thoroughly vet its findings, and assure Georgians that he is doing everything possible to ensure the system, procedures, and equipment are completely secure. Again, this shows one possible vulnerability that probably has already been fixed by now. I think it would be important to release it to show that the system does work, that the system has identified something and has fixed it. And once again, coinciding with all the previous recounts and reports that proved, once again, that there was absolutely no fraud in the 2020 election involving these machines. It should be released. And again, we should take election security very, very seriously. I think as we all do. And, you know, if you're ignoring that issue, if you're trying to release a report because you're afraid of conspiracy theorists, I'm sorry, but you're just going to end up feeding the conspiracy theorists. And so I think transparency is just the best way to go.